Just now, Khenpo began his explanation from the perspectives of innate evil and innate goodness in traditional culture, and further connected and related these with the discussion of human nature in Buddhism. He also related it to the concepts of positive and negative energy proposed by the renowned modern scholar Carnegie, and went on to analyze the issue in depth. There was another point that really surprised me, which was his detailed explanation and clarification of Marx's view on religion. In the past, when we read Marx's works and writings, or in our political classes, we regarded religion as spiritual opium. But opium in that era was not the same as it is in our current times. This is what I found most enlightening. Now, for the remaining time, everyone can join in the discussion. If you have any questions, things you understand or do not understand, or any thoughts, please feel free to share them with us at any time. Let's see if anyone has any questions. If you do, great. You can hold on to this and speak later, okay?
Hello. I agree with what you said about the inherent goodness of human nature. Human nature is positive, and I also believe that our true selves are happy. But in reality, I often feel confused, sometimes lost, unable to see the direction clearly. I feel that this shouldn't be my true self, nor is it the state I ought to be in. So I'd just like to ask you, how can I return to my true nature and find my positive energy so that I can feel more like my authentic self and experience a greater sense of well-being and positivity in my life? Thank you for your guidance and support.
I
am currently a student in the 2013 class of Marxist philosophy at the School of Marxism.
I think each of us should perhaps for now may not necessarily be able to fully recognize this positive energy of goodness within ourselves. But in reality, in our daily lives, if we often convey the idea of goodness, then we can find the true face of our original goodness. In traditional Chinese culture, there's a famous book called The Standards for Being a Good Pupil, Di Zigui, which says, speaking of others' goodness is goodness itself. Spreading others' faults is evil itself. This means that when we often recognize the merits of others and speak well of them, praising their virtues, by expressing admiration for others, we are actually doing good ourselves. But if we often speak ill of others or frequently point out their shortcomings, even when it is not necessary, others may or may not be bad, but in reality, I am the one who truly becomes a bad person. If I constantly talk about others' faults, I myself become a bad person. In Buddhism, we often say that if you are a bad person, you tend to speak ill of others. On the other hand, if you are a good person, you generally speak well of others. This means that in our daily lives, we may not realize it, but the ancients paid great attention to this. People who often like to talk about others' faults are actually not good people. They are constantly spreading negative, harmful energy to themselves and others. Even if you encounter some unpleasant things in life, try to say as little as possible about them. And whenever you do speak, try to emphasize their positive side and share that with others. By doing so, your own lifespan, health and happiness will naturally follow. So in daily life, I personally often think this way. I always try to promote the positive side in life as much as possible. Even though I see some negative things, I do my best to restrain myself and avoid saying too many really bad things. By doing this can help you find yourself.
Hello, Master. I believe that my question is quite simple. I'm the kind of person who truly wants to find my true self. Sometimes I actually try to work hard. But then again, it really does seem like the external forces are, as far as I can tell, incredibly powerful. It's that feeling of going with the flow.
Yes, my answer is also very simple. I think it's better this way.
Hello, dear Master Khenpo. Thank you so much for coming to our school and giving us a talk about the exploration and education of human nature. I just have a question about the cycle of human nature that I'd like to discuss with you. I'm studying the cynicization of Marxism. I am currently a first-year graduate student of the 2013 cohort in a 3-year master's program studying Marxism. We generally, like everyone else, believe in materialism, that is, the view that matter determines consciousness, and that the essence of the world is material. In other words, we think that the physical world forms the basis of our thoughts and awareness. However, in my spare time, I also read books on Marxism and other subjects related to our field, which helps me explore different perspectives and deepen my understanding. I've also read, on my own, some unofficial historical accounts and stories about things like reincarnation. There's one unofficial account that goes like this. Our Song Dynasty philosopher Wang Yangming was a monk 50 years ago. When he passed away in that life, it is said that he used his own brush to inscribe a couplet on the wall. The couplet read, 50 years later, the one who opens this door will be the same person who closed it. 50 years later, after he was reborn, he had already become a philosopher of the Song Dynasty. Once, when he visited a temple, for some unknown reason, he stopped in front of the room where he had passed away in his previous life. He really wanted to go in and see it, though he didn't know why. He was just especially curious. At that particular moment, a staff member who was busy in the process of cleaning the courtyard said, "This is a forbidden area. You can't go in." Later, after he pleaded, the staff member agreed to let him briefly take a look. Afterwards, he felt a sense of belonging. This is from an unofficial account, so I really want to say, I myself study the cynicization of Marxism as my major. I firmly believe in the primacy of materialism, but when it comes to the reincarnation of the human mind, the question of whether people actually experience reincarnation, I would like to ask for your guidance. Thank you.
I think regarding the idea that matter determines consciousness, or some of the theories related to the cynicization of Marxism, of course, according to our educational system, there are also some ways to explain this. As I just reminded everyone, in that era, some of the things he said should be understood as having their own significance and purpose, whether it's our concept of the 6 realms of reincarnation or the traditional doctrine of the 6 realms. If one tries to overturn it, I think, not just Marxist theory, but any other theory would find it extremely difficult to refute. As I just gave you as an example, the story you just mentioned, I have also cited it in other books. This is not actually a legend, nor is it a myth. This is an actual historical event. We have a lot more evidence, and I have made further discoveries. For example, as I mentioned earlier, there is a doctor named Dr. Weiss. In his books, there are about 20,000 cases of people recalling their past and future lives. At that time, there was Dr. Zhong Maosen, who was studying in the United States. When he was teaching at the University of Texas, he contacted Dr. Weiss. The materials that he collected were of a similar nature. There is also an American researcher named Dr. Tucker. Recently, Dr. Tucker has compiled cases of people recalling their past lives into detailed written records. We are also currently working on translating these cases. In fact, if our consciousness is truly determined by matter alone, this is very challenging to fully understand or explain, because there are many living beings, including humans, that survive without a brain. There are also many such animals in the world around us, for example, and so on. And if we really are, in fact, just a product of matter, then there are many cases in the world, including the ones you just mentioned, as well as thousands upon thousands of similar examples of animals turning into humans and humans turning into animals. I have also collected a considerable amount of valuable information in the past. So I hope that many of our scholars, we will especially look more closely into Buddhism when it comes to the issue between matter and consciousness. This is not about needing faith. Rather, we are talking about theoretical perspectives. In Buddhism, there is a well-known text called the Pramana Vinishkaya, the commentary on valid cognition. The Pramana Vinishkaya specifically discusses the relationship between the body and consciousness. It is entirely a debate of wisdom, not a matter of faith. If our mind arises from the human body, it is very difficult to refute many problems. Due to time constraints, I think if we want to explore this further, I have already discussed it in other courses. I especially hope that many of our young people will understand the long-term existence of consciousness and the real existence of past and future lives. If you don't know this, I think it's truly a pity.
So people do actually have past lives, right? And there is indeed, in fact, reincarnation, correct? Thank you.
It definitely exists.
Hello, I am from the School of Marxism, majoring in philosophy of science and technology. My viewpoint might be somewhat different from yours. Personally, I think that human nature at its origin contains both good and evil. It's quite similar to the concept of the 7 deadly sins, which are discussed in Western religious studies. They say that people are born with sin. These 7 desires are present in everyone from childhood, even before they have learned anything at all. Desire should exist in the subconscious of every person. If you say that human nature is good, then should we consider these 7 desires as good or evil? You said if someone is a good person, then this person should handle things in a good way. But at the same time, there's a saying, to punish evil is to promote good. If someone is doing evil, and you use a rather violent or extreme method to punish that evil, then is that considered good or evil? Okay, thank you.
First of all, in Western religions, Christianity believes that humans are born with original sin. Why is baptism necessary in the first place? Because of original sin. Of course, this might just be a doctrine of their religion. We respect this viewpoint, but if it is truly the case, there are still some questions about it. Why do I say this? Because it is believed that God created humans. So how many people did he create? Did every person originate from Adam, or how did it happen? There are certain doubts in this regard. What I just mentioned is that human nature is inherently good, but that doesn't mean people are completely without any wrongdoing. Our original nature is good, but it later becomes tainted by evil. When someone turns from evil to good, it means that at some point in their life, they have committed certain wrongdoings. There is a gradual process from committing evil to eventually becoming good, which is why I gave an example earlier. If our nature is fundamentally good, then in the future we can become good again. I'm not sure if you've studied this kind of goodness before, or if you have ever thought about it in detail. In Buddhism, the Platform Sutra of the 6th Patriarch famously teaches, affliction is Bodhi. What you just mentioned, the so-called evil, the so-called desires, actually, from the perspective of ultimate reality, these desires are inherently good, not evil. If one can recognize this, it becomes a great good. Therefore, in the Buddhist view of ultimate reality, these things are considered to be good and not evil. Why is that the case, you might ask? Because such desires, such ignorance as these, indeed, their true nature is actually wisdom, not ignorance. Moreover, even these karmic offenses can possess purity. If they did not contain purity, they would always be evil. But in reality, our lives also prove that this is not the case.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate your help.
Hello, Master. I am a first-year graduate student in the Ideological and Political Education program. Master, you just mentioned that human nature is inherently good. However, because of various external temptations, we end up absorbing many negative things. I would like to ask you, where do these bad things, this evil, actually come from? Because when we interact with others, basically, we humans are the cells of society, engaging in social activities. Much of what we absorb comes from others, from the activities of others. Or you could say we learn within an environment created by others and their actions. Where does this evil come from? And I have another question. You just mentioned that it takes 3 years to move upward, but only a day to fall downward. Since human nature is inherently good, why does it only take a day to go bad, but 3 years to become good? Thank you.
Very good. Let me explain. First, human nature is indeed considered to be good by nature, as many philosophers have argued. So how does evil arise in human beings? In fact, evil is not part of our true nature. If it were, it would be impossible to wash away. Our sky, by nature, is immaculately pure and naturally clear. But the clouds that cover the sky, those drifting shapes that sometimes block the sun, come by chance. Where do they come from? There are many different sources of this evil, each one adding to the darkness that can fill the sky. For example, can you tell me, where does your own sense of greed actually come from? When people in the society around us are continually seeking wealth, especially in their daily lives, that environment will inevitably influence you. If you lived in a pure and quiet monastery, you might not feel such strong greed. But if you live in a city, especially among a group of people who are very greedy, you will become especially greedy yourself. So, as I mentioned earlier, environment, friends, and all sorts of other conditions can influence you. Just like the sky, which is pure and clear, but the clouds, these various other conditions such as these, come from different causes, in fact. In this way, actually speaking, these conditions are also of many different kinds. But in reality, they are not the true nature, just as clouds are not the true nature of the sky. Goodness should be its true nature. It's simply that sometimes these clouds come and cover it. As for the second question just now, 3 years to move upward, but only a day to fall. This is also a rule that applies in real society. Generally speaking, it's very difficult for us to make progress in anything we do. Why is that? It's not because its essence is not good. The essence is good, but to get rid of the bad habits on top of it takes a certain amount of time. It's very easy for negative information to overshadow it. We have many ways to explain this. From the Buddhist perspective, this is called the age of the 5 defilements, because now in the Dharma-ending age, although sentient beings' fundamental nature is good, there are many conditions, defilements of affliction, defilements of sentient beings, defilements of views. This is one kind of condition, and there is another kind as well. When it comes to practicing goodness, many people are not interested. Even when we watch the news now, there is very little coverage or reporting of good deeds, positive actions, or uplifting stories each day. All day long, it's things that grab people's attention, like thefts today. Many news media outlets nowadays are also unwilling to spread ideas of goodness to the public. If ideas of goodness are spread, no one watches. But if negative ideas are spread, everyone likes to watch. So now, whether it's performances or other things we often see, our society has become one where negative phenomena are more common. Of course, this does not actually represent or reflect the fundamentally good nature of people as a whole. Even though there are many dark and ominous clouds in the sky, this doesn't actually mean that in reality the whole sky itself possesses any evil qualities.
Hello, Khenpo. I am a student in the 3rd year of the Science and Philosophy program. I have a question about 3 small social phenomena. For example, some people are under a lot of social pressure. During the morning rush hour, they jump into the subway station, which is essentially committing suicide by lying on the tracks. At this moment, the train driver is actually unaware, but he ends up killing someone. So is he a victim, or is he someone who has harmed another? The second phenomenon is this. Some children are incited or instructed by slightly older kids and are forced to bully even younger children. So this child is a victim, but at the same time, he is also someone who harms others. The third phenomenon is like a news story from some time ago. A city management officer got into a conflict with a street vendor and was tragically stabbed to death by the vendor. This vendor, in fact, was also a victim, but he ended up killing someone. So among these 3 roles, are they ultimately, in your opinion, considered to be perpetrators or victims? Because you said that whether a person is kind or evil is influenced by their own subjective consciousness, right? But actually, the first 2 seem to be forced into it, especially that driver. He didn't subjectively want to run someone over. It was the other person who committed suicide. But for him, he would still feel in his heart that he killed someone. How should people in their position understand this kind of situation? Or how can they come to terms with it themselves? Thank you.
Actually, the 3 types of questions you just raised should indeed be carefully considered. In different contexts. In Marxist thought, you also often emphasize analyzing specific issues in a specific way. We can't really generalize absolutely everything. Every single issue has its own particular method of analysis. Of course, according to our Buddhist principles and other related doctrines, if it comes to the matter of killing, there are 4 specific conditions that must be met. First, you must have the intention to kill someone. This is the first condition. Second, if you intend to kill someone, you must not mistake the target. If I intend to kill, I can't actually mean to kill Wang, but end up killing Li instead. That does not amount to a fully completed act of killing in the karmic sense. Third, there must be an actual deliberate action on my part. Fourth, the other person's life must have been ended. These 4 are generally considered the complete set of conditions for killing in Buddhism. In other words, for something to constitute the crime of murder now, this is how it is explained in Buddhism, and the law says the same. So in the three cases you just mentioned, when we carefully analyze each specific issue in detail, if all four of these important conditions are fully met, then it can indeed be considered to be constituted. Whether it's killing oneself or someone else, all these conditions must be fulfilled. If even one of them is not met, even if the person participated in part of the act of killing, it cannot be constituted. So the analysis in law and in Buddhism is, in many respects, indeed actually quite similar. We should look at the specific issue, specifically examine the person's mindset, actions, and the outcome. Only by analyzing factors like the stage of involvement at the time can we truly understand. Thank you.
Hello, Khenpo Master. I'd like to follow up on the question about killing and ask for your guidance. In Buddhism, you mentioned that human nature is inherently good. When facing murderers, according to Buddhist principles, how should we face or deal with murderers in real-life situations today? From another perspective, if you are not speaking from the standpoint of Buddhist philosophy, how do you personally, honestly view or understand such murderers? Or just out of curiosity, how would you personally deal with such murderers? Thank you.
According to Buddhist principles in the Buddhist scriptures, do murderers need to be punished for their actions? Yes, they do, but the punishment itself is complex and varies. In ancient India at that time, under the rule of many kings, there were also reported cases of murder. In such situations, according to Buddhist thought and philosophy, the person should be sentenced to life imprisonment. You could say an indefinite sentence that does not have a set end date. However, Buddhism advocates that it is best not to take their life. This is the view held by most Buddhist scriptures. Therefore, I personally believe that the murderers that appear in today's world, in fact, some of them use extremely vicious means, while some kill unintentionally. No matter what, do they need to be punished? I think they definitely need to be punished. But in terms of the method of punishment, I think it's best to follow the Buddhist perspective. And if they are never released, that is also an opportunity for them to atone for their crimes and to reflect on their actions. It's best not to kill them for this reason, because their lives are also very precious. Buddhism teaches that life is the most precious thing. I think that whether someone is considered evil or good, their life is still very precious and valuable. If someone kills in a moment of sudden impulse, afterwards they often feel deep and profound remorse. Therefore, whether from my own perspective or from the Buddhist perspective, is it necessary to punish them? Yes, it is necessary. But as for the method of punishment, I think life imprisonment is best.
Hello, Khenpo. Just now you mentioned that Buddhism says doing good brings happiness and well-being. But in real life, sometimes when we do good deeds, not only do we not feel happy, but we even suffer because of it. For example, helping an elderly person up but then being falsely accused instead. When we encounter such situations, what should we do? Thank you.
As I just said, doing good is actually a source of happiness. But this happiness, on one hand, comes from being a good person yourself. When you do good deeds, you do them with a joyful mindset. On the other hand, it might bring you some trouble or pain in the moment. Especially in today's society, this is very possible. But this, I would say, is also related to your other karmic conditions. Whether I help an elderly person today or do other good deeds, the results will manifest in the future. The law of cause and effect never fails. The good deeds I do today will bring me karmic rewards in the future. If I am punished by others today, or if helping an elderly person ends up causing me quite a bit of trouble or inconvenience, it is related to other karmic conditions. So in Buddhism, we say that good deeds bring good results, but this kind of retribution for good deeds does not always happen immediately in this lifetime. Some karma may eventually ripen in my old age, while some may only bear fruit in my next life. Farmers do not expect to harvest their crops immediately after planting the seeds, as they know it takes time. There is no such thing as good and evil. The cause and effect are extremely complex and intricate. Therefore, the good deeds I did today are the cause of happiness.
So you mean Planting seeds of kindness will surely, perhaps in the end, yield kind results. But it just takes time, right?
You're right, no doubt about it.
Thank you so much for your attention. I sincerely appreciate it.
Hello, Master Khenpo. I am a 2012 graduate student and I have a question for you. May I ask, Master, how do you view the relationship between engaging with the world and withdrawing from it? There is also a common misconception in society that becoming a monk is a way of escaping from reality. How do you see this issue?
Okay, about the relationship between engaging with the world and withdrawing, the sixth patriarch once spoke about this very issue in the Platform Sutra. Buddhist teachings are inseparable from worldly matters and experiences in our daily lives. In fact, true Buddhism is not about leaving the world behind. It should be said that in every corner of the world, the ideals of Buddhist compassion and wisdom can be found. Buddhist thought has never been separated from the world. For this reason, I personally believe that becoming a monk is not an act of escape. Many young people today think that becoming a monk seems like running away from society. This widespread misconception is also influenced by Jin Yong's popular novels and some portrayals in current media in modern times. Under the influence of their ideas, a misunderstanding has arisen, you could say. Since ancient times, in principle, as a monk, their ongoing concern for society and their contributions to society are significant and should not be ignored. 10 years ago, I wrote a book called On Buddhist Science. In it, I dedicated an entire article to the contributions of monastics to society. It's not to say that we are the only ones contributing to society, but since ancient times, especially many eminent monks and great masters in Chinese history have made significant contributions to promoting morality and goodness in society. I have given examples of these contributions one by one. I think that many young people born after the 1970s and 1980s, because in the 1970s and 1980s, there were certain novels and movies which led many people to feel that when they were at a dead end in life, they would often take on the role of a monastic or the role of someone committing suicide. Especially now in many universities, some college students who jump to their deaths. This is also somewhat related to our current films and DVDs. In fact, if such messages are widely spread, it often leads to a great deal of misunderstanding, confusion, and ignorance of the actual truth within society. There is indeed a certain and undeniable connection. So I personally believe that whether at home or abroad, including much evidence from ancient social history, this pattern can be clearly observed. In reality, the path of monasticism is truly not related to escapism at all. On the contrary, it is truly a way of being responsible to society. In Tibetan regions, many monastics run schools and contribute to society because they are free from worries and cares, and they are able to let go of themselves completely, possessing a sense of social responsibility. Some lay people, on the other hand, have to worry about their own official positions. They also have to think about their children and worry about their family's future livelihood. As a result, there are things they could have done, but they are never able to accomplish them. This phenomenon is very common. So in real life, I have also seen a few cases, though I don't dare to rule them out entirely. There are indeed cases where some monastics truly couldn't make it in society, or were affected by certain personal setbacks and challenges, and ultimately chose the monastery. I do not deny this possibility, but for the majority, this is not the case.
Master, hello. I am very excited to see you today. I have been reading your works for some time now. I have a particular inquiry, which also relates to what we've discussed today. Currently, there are some aspects of society that do not quite accept Buddhism or Buddhists. I would like to ask you, Master, as a Buddhist, how can one do better in everyday life? If someone has taken on some volunteer work, how can they put some of their ideas, including, as we discussed today, positive energy, how can we pass it on to others? I wonder, how can we do this even better? Thank you, Master.
As a practicing Buddhist, if you wish to first pass on this kind of positive energy to the wider society around you, there are actually two important things that you need to do. The first is that you should be able to adapt to today's society. Nowadays, some Buddhists, after learning Buddhism, seem to become useless members of society. They are completely unwilling to go to work or to communicate well with their families. Even their clothing and appearance are extremely shabby. I think this is completely unnecessary. Although studying and practicing Buddhism does require a certain amount of time and energy, in order to get along with the world around us, we should adjust ourselves to this society. We should be just like everyone else in the world and do what needs to be done. In front of others, we should always present ourselves as very reasonable and positive individuals. We should also play the role of someone who is proactive and truly upbeat. At the same time, we should pass on any kind of positive energy to others. The second issue is, when I try to pass it on to others, the process is actually not very easy, especially in today's society. People's vanity is very strong, and their selfishness is particularly intense. In such a society, trying to spread genuinely positive and kind energy is definitely going to be challenging. But at this time, you shouldn't be afraid of difficulties or of what others might say. You must combine the concepts of wisdom and compassion, bringing them together in your life. Without wisdom, you won't have skillful means, and when you hit a wall, there's nothing you can do. If you lack compassion, your altruistic intentions will quickly fade away. As a result, you might not be able to keep doing this forever. Therefore, I believe that if you have both wisdom and compassion, your positive energy should spread farther and become even more powerful. In the end, it will definitely bear fruit.
Thank you, Master.
Let's see if anyone else in the group has any questions or comments before we move on. If not, I'll ask one myself. Nowadays, we all say that human nature is inherently good. And we try to guide people toward goodness through various forms of education. But after all these years, after thousands of years of education, there are still many people who do evil, and society's environment is still so bad. How exactly should we understand this? Can Buddhism do better and change this situation?
In fact, Buddhism teaches that for the true nature of goodness to manifest, it takes a very long time. For example, to attain Buddhahood. In Buddhism, there is a specific term called 3 Asamkhyeya Kalpas, or 3 countless eons. So the few hundred or even a few thousand years we talk about here are not considered very long, because the time we have been immersed in samsara is extremely, extremely long. When compared to that kind of immense and almost unfathomable timescale, I think the few thousand or even just a few hundred years we mention now really aren't long at all. However, in Buddhism, there are special teachings that further elaborate on the concept of goodness. Although human nature is inherently good, the entire society and environment, there is the age of the degenerate Dharma, the age of the semblance Dharma, and the age of the true Dharma. The Buddha described our capacities and the errors in different ways. So according to these descriptions, for now, it is almost impossible for many people to fully practice virtuous deeds according to Buddhist principles. Why is that? Because, as Buddhism says, we are currently in the stage of the age of the degenerate Dharma. Maitreya Bodhisattva will appear in the future, and the Buddha appeared during the age of the true Dharma. After the Buddha gave teachings, many people attained realization and achieved enlightenment right then and there. The original goodness of their inherent nature manifested clearly, and many attained liberation. But each era is different, so when Maitreya Buddha appears in the world, those who now form virtuous connections for liberation will quickly develop wisdom. So I think that even though there is some evil in people's hearts in this degenerate age, if many people truly comprehend and appreciate this truth, then in fact, compared to other social forces or influences, we should say that everyone has the ability to develop their own true nature. In this regard, Buddhism should play a significant role.
Hello, I would like to ask a question. How can personal Buddhist practice and the pursuit of material things in real life peacefully coexist with each other? Because in the eyes of us ordinary people, to hold on to one thing well, you really have to let go of the other. Because I actually feel that our human energy is very limited. It's impossible to grasp both at the same time. Also, if you can master one of them well, then how can you cultivate that one even better? Or if it's possible to hold on to both, I would like to ask the Master for guidance.
Actually, it should be possible. We can eat vegetables and rice simultaneously, because spiritual practice is a way of regulating one's own moral conduct, a way to perfect one's mind. Pursuing life is also about making your existence and your life more brilliant, vibrant, and deeply meaningful. If you're interested in both of these aspects, you can absolutely pursue them at the same time without having to choose one over the other. Because in fact, each of our pursuits it's not that if you pursue one, all other actions are impossible. That's not the case. Life isn't a one-way street where every action is isolated. I think it's possible to pursue both in parallel. It's just that our pursuit of material things shouldn't be overly greedy. If you become too insatiable, even your spiritual practice and even your sense of happiness may gradually vanish completely without leaving a trace. There is that risk. So, as we appropriately pursue life, we can also take the time to adjust our mindset and practice spiritual cultivation at the same time, allowing ourselves to grow and find balance.
Hello, Khenpo Professor. 2 students just mentioned the topic of killing. Whether intentional or not, from a Buddhist perspective, do you think it's best to sentence someone to life imprisonment, not the death penalty? Another student just mentioned doing good deeds. You also said that good people will be rewarded, but the reward may not come in this life. In real life, wouldn't this end up encouraging people to do evil instead of good? Because if there's no death penalty anymore, for example, some corrupt individuals, they might think, since there's no death penalty anyway, I won't be sentenced to death. So would they become even more reckless in amassing wealth and engaging in corruption?
Actually, whether someone chooses to kill or not really has nothing to do with the sentence that they will ultimately receive. Many people refrain from killing not because they are afraid of the death penalty. It's not like that. They are restrained by their morals. Moreover, if someone kills another person, whether they're sentenced to death or to life imprisonment, it is an extremely painful and distressing experience for them either way. That's why, even in societies where the death penalty still exists, murders unfortunately still keep happening. So it really does not make much of a significant difference in terms of preventing such tragic events from occurring. People do not kill simply because there is no death penalty, and they do not want to kill more at all. None of us would ever have such a thought.
All right, that's about it for today's lecture. Khenpo presented and introduced Western ideas from the perspective of traditional culture and also incorporated modern viewpoints overall. He also explained many issues related to human nature to us. Some of these issues were ones we had previously misunderstood. Some of them, perhaps, we still haven't fully resolved. Through this learning, we feel greatly inspired. It has been very helpful to everyone. I hope everyone will reflect more on these topics in daily life as well. We all have a kind and compassionate heart, and we sincerely hope to be good people, to become even better individuals who actively contribute to the well-being of our society. Today, Khenpo took this opportunity to give us such a wonderful lecture that combined both academic and practical aspects of life. Let us all please give him a very warm and heartfelt round of applause as we see him off, everyone.